Number 10, an apple a day. If you threw an apple at somebody today, that would be assault. Yeah, you're not allowed to do that. You can't huck food at people. Now, then, ever. Let's just not do that anymore. But in ancient Greek days, it was a little different, dare I say. The apple, back then, had quite the symbolism attached to it. The apple was sacred to Aphrodite. This was a symbol for the goddess of love. So, to throw an apple at somebody, that meant you were throwing your heart at them, right? How romantic is that? Just a nice apple with bugs in it. You're like, here you go, there's lunch. Ancient flirting, my friend. The more you know. Maybe those trees in The Wizard of Oz weren't mean. Maybe they weren't mean at all. Maybe they were just trying to express their love by throwing apples aggressively at everyone involved. Number 9, raining iguanas. Okay, we're immediately dipping back into the weird side of this list. Here we go. Back in 2018, this was wild. I read about this and I'll never forget. Lives rent-free right in my head. Florida got another odd headline. There you go, classic Florida. This time it was frozen iguanas falling from the skies. Yeah, how do you not pick up that paper, right? Florida got hit with a massive snowfall, their first big one in 28 years. So these cold-blooded guys started to fall from suburban tree branches, right? They didn't see it coming at all. People were just walking to get groceries and iguanas are freezing and falling off trees right in front of them. The craziest thing is that they're just paralyzed. They're not dead, obviously. So later, they would come back to life after they, de-thaw. Sounds so zombie-like when you say it like that. They're just lying there and then all of a sudden they're like, what day is it? Was it a snowfall? Oh God. Winter has come. Number 8, the Philadelphia experiment. Okay, a little more darker. Let's do it. Perhaps one of the most bizarre tales when it comes to other dimensions. This one has credibility behind it. It pops up on my Reddit feed a lot, so I can't help but not talk about it. The 1943 Philadelphia experiment. This World War II conspiracy theory takes place on the USS Eldridge, this destroyer-class ship. So it wasn't small, it was quite large. A lot of people on board, a lot of heads, a lot of witnesses. And they were conducting on this ship these secret experiments in order to gain power over naval warfare, obviously at the time. Now, one of these experiments was to create this technology that makes the ship invisible on radar. That's the important note. It was supposed to be invisible on radar. But when the generators were fired up, the hull apparently lit up with this green and blue light. Then the ship itself actually disappeared. Invisible in real life, not just on radar. Boom, gone, just like that. It was then seen at a naval shipyard in Virginia before the same thing happened again, and then it appeared back at Philadelphia. Now this sounds a bit intense, but when you hear about the crew on board, it only gets worse. Some went mad after the dimensional dip, of course, while others had physical effects from this cosmic commute. Yeah, some haunting details in that one. Some body parts that got mixed up with, yeah, I can't even talk about it. You get it. If you've seen the Cloverfield paradox, it's kind of like that. Some blooping and blipping, and then some arms getting stuck in some walls. There we go.
Number 7, the Battle of Bannockburn. This infamous battle between Scotland and England was one of the most important battles of the Middle Ages. The end of the bloody war for independence. Basically, Scotland was like, yeah, we're gonna go over here and roll our R's. The gruesome wooden wars were caused by the English invading Scotland in 1296. A leader slowly rising the ranks, William Wallace, the guardian of the King of Scotland himself, holds off the English forces and is knighted a hero to Scotland. Unfortunately, like every hero back then, he was also hated. He was captured, hanged, drawn, and quartered. Like, why do you have to do all that after he dies? Like, he's dead. Not fun. The battles between Scotland and England ended in 1314 with Robert the Bruce securing Scotland's independence, adding like 45 more dialects to the UK. Freedom! Number 6, the Black Death. Ooh, talk about a curveball. The year's 1348. People are saying things like, don't let the bed bugs bite. Clearly not a very clean and safe time. The Black Death, aka pestilence, aka the Great Mortality, or simply known as the Plague. Single-handedly the worst pandemic ever recorded in history, wiping out somewhere between 70 to 200 million people. Ooh, now I get where bless you comes from. Someone sneezed back then and everyone's dead at 14. This is where we see those doctors in the terrifying bird outfits with the long noses stuffed with garlic and herbs. Excuse me? Yeah, he's not wearing the mask. I'm just trying to watch a cat publicly get skinned. Yeah, 6 feet please. Some doctors prescribed urinating on a person so that the bad smell would drive out the infection. Can you imagine? Just a doctor writing you up a script and go ahead and pee on yourself about 4 to 5 times a day. Take with food. Should be gone early next week. And just let me put my mask back on here before you leave. There you are. The plague started in Europe in October 1347 when 12 ships from the Black Sea docked at the Sicilian port of Messina. Most sailors aboard the ships were already dead. but those who were still alive were covered head to toe in black boils that oozed pus and blood. Ugh. Sometimes the Black Death included fever, chills, vomiting, diarrhea, temporary loss in motor skills, and then, of course, death. Number 5. Joan of Arc. Finally, a woman in the Middle Ages! Who'da thunk? Joan of Arc was considered and still is revered the heroine of France for her role in the Siege of Orleans during France's 100-year war with England. Joan of Arc, a peasant with faith on her side, had believed that God had chosen her to lead France in victory against England and had spoken to her since she was young. At only age 17, she had stolen men's armors, a white horse, and like a Valkyrie riding into battle, she had convinced an entire army that she was appointed by God to win. And then did! That's the most badass thing I've ever heard in my entire life. After such a miraculous victory, her reputation spread among France, and upon her capture and death at 19, the Maid of Orleans herself would forever live on as one of the greatest saints and symbols of the country of France. Number 4. Henry V. Another war? All these people do is kill each other. Does anyone fish? Or golf? No one, huh? Just swords and heads, swords and heads. A history itself. This time, England beats France. King Henry V, Prince Hal himself, leans into his kingly duties, demolishing France in what Shakespeare would delve into years to come. The Battle of Agincourt is one of England's most celebrated victories and was one of the most important triumphs in the 100 Years' War. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment. Henry V, prologue. Good stuff. How come these guys didn't just like rap battle or play soccer or something? Like, an arrow right through the chest is way worse than a red card, just saying. Hey, speaking of soccer.
Number 3, mass extinctions. Are we part of the 6th extinction? I mean, we're talking about asteroids getting blasted away from Earth. It kind of feels like it. It kind of feels like something's nearing us. It's happening right now, isn't it? We lose thousands of species every year, and when looking in the past, sure, asteroids and ice ages, they've all caused these massive extinction level events, of course. But after humans invented the wheel and discovered fire and, became the worst things ever to exist, things started to change naturally. In the 1800s, industrialization drove up extinction rates and continues to do so, obviously. We're not helping the planet by any means. And according to Elizabeth Colbert, across the world, scientists every day are monitoring what could be the largest extinction event since the dinosaurs. Right now, it's happening right now. The way human beings interact with the environment and affect biodiversity, it could be more deadly than an asteroid hitting the Earth. That's a fun, scary fact. Okay. With an ever-climbing list of endangered species, Colbert and the world ask the question, is it too late to change it? Kind of feels like it's too late. Okay, let's move on to something a little more lighter so we don't feel like complete trash. Deal? Deal. Number 2, relaxative. Okay, so right off the bat, the Victorian era was a little messy. I'm sure you've figured this out by now, but these messy illnesses were putting a lot of pressure on medical practitioners back in the Victorian day, so they were desperate for new treatments. Sometimes I laugh at Victorian medical treatments, but they tried. And they also achieved many medical breakthroughs, one that I saved for number 1. But when it came to handling chickenpox in the Victorian era, that wasn't our finest hour. No, we didn't figure that one out, I don't think, right off the bat. Chickenpox in the Victorian era was being treated by using laxatives. Yeah, just let that sink in for a second. I have chickenpox. What should I do, doc? Just go take a shit. Or 6, I don't know, might help. Yeah, folks would slam some castor oil and then, ready for this? They would get even more sick. Yeah, who would have thought, right? You thought you were uncomfortable before. Well, not even close. Not every answer was a solution in the Victorian era. But this one was. And finally, number 1, the discovery of penicillin. Thank God this one happened. We'll still talk about this one because it's a really good one. Sometimes miracles happen when nobody is in the room or no one's looking. That's ideally the best time. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin back in 1928. Now at the time, he was actually studying staphylococcus, which is bacteria that causes infections and boils and all that nasty stuff. But right before Alexander left for a well-earned 2-week vacation, he left a petri dish with some of that staphylococcus right there on the table, just sitting there. Rather than, store it away in an incubator, he just accidentally left it out. Now during this time off, a penicillium mold, the spore just drifted in there, either through a window or up the lab stairwell, some Horton Hears a Who type commute. It drifted in there, and the temperatures of the room and the lack of one Alexander Fleming allowed for the mold to fight back. And then miracles literally happened. It then prevented that bacteria from growing anymore. So he returned and discovered this antibacterial substance was only produced by strains of penicillium. So now we have a solution that isn't a laxative. You know what I mean? Now we have some things that help us out medicinally.
Number 10. Abe the wrestler. At 20 years old with a record of 300 fights and 1 loss, he stands 6'4" at 185 pounds. Your future president of the United States, Honest Abe! The chair! Give him the chair! That's right, Abe Lincoln was quite the ruffian. However, the wrestling back then wasn't as organized, as there was no WWF per se. It was mostly just a show of strength and skill, but they were competitions among men. Huge crowds gathered, towns watched, everybody gambled. It was great. A little wrestling. His fights earned him respect while campaigning too. He would even scrap hecklers at debates. Yeah, just walks down midpoint and wheeler whips someone under their neck. His chirps were amazing too. He would just look at people like Gladiator and call them out. He'd be like, hey, I'm the big buck of this lick. If any of you want to try it, come on and get your wet horns. Yeah, I didn't think so. Sorry, Mr. Douglas, proceed. Thank you.
Number 9, Roy Sullivan. They say lightning never strikes the same place twice, but if you knew Roy Sullivan, you knew that's not entirely true. Yeah, meet the man who was struck by lightning 7 times and lived to tell the tale. Roy Sullivan was born in 1912. He sadly passed away in 1983 when he was 71 years old, but God tried a few times to get him out earlier, it seems. He was born in Greene County, Virginia. Roy was a park ranger in Shenandoah National Park in 1936. He was nicknamed the Human Lightning Conductor, and he appeared in the Guinness Book of World Records. Roy's first encounter with, the might of Thor was when he was just 30 years old at the Fire Lookout Tower. He said that lightning strike, again out of the 7 he survived, was the most painful out of all of them. The lightning bolt burned a strip all the way down his leg, even blowing a hole through his shoe. Yet somehow he survived. Roy was also hit by lightning in 1969 while driving a truck, and also in 1970 while gardening on an otherwise clear day like today. Also in 1972 while inside a guardhouse. Also in 1976 during another storm, and finally in 1977 while fishing. Yeah, Roy passed away in 1983, and to this day, 2 of his ranger hats are on display at the Guinness World exhibits in New York City and South Carolina. This man cheated death 8 times. 7.
Number 8, Miss Unsinkable. Violet Constant Jessup, aka the Queen of Sinking Ships, or Miss Unsinkable, was an Argentine-Irish woman who worked as an ocean liner stewardess, memoirist, and Red Cross nurse in the early 20th century. Jessup is well known for having survived 3 sinkings of major ships: the RMS Olympic in 1911, the RMS Titanic in 1912, and her sister the HMHS Britannic in 1916. Yeah, talk about the luckiest person ever. Lady's got some angels watching over her, I swear. The first ship, they turned around and made it back just in time. The Titanic, well, watch the movie, you'll understand. And then the third ship, it must have just felt personal by that point. Really? Not to mention barely surviving tuberculosis as a child. This woman is truly a saint. Returning to work after all those accidents, dedicating her entire life to the Red Cross, trying to save others. Sadly, she passed away at 83.
Number 7, Ellen Shannon. Heading over to the late 1800s for this one. I gotta warn you, it's of course pretty dark. In 1870, we obviously didn't have the same safety requirements as we do today for anything, like at all. For example, if you wanted to read before bed, you didn't have a Kindle or an iPad. Hell, you didn't even have a nightlight, but you did have a kerosene lamp. Always coming in handy, those kerosene lamps. See, Ellen had used R.E. Danforth's non-reactive burning fluid. And dare I say, the obvious happened. The fluid reacted. Yeah, her tomb in Pennsylvania reads, "In memory of Ellen Shannon, aged 26 years old, who was fatally burned March 21st, 1870 by the reaction of a lamp filled with R.E. Danforth's non-reactive burning fluid." Yeah, they just called him out right there, right in public on the actual tomb. I gotta say, I agree with that. That's cool. If some idiot's gonna cause your horrible demise, yeah, roast them. Let people know. Let people know who's responsible. That's like Twitter nowadays, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, just so-and-so is an asshole. Send tweet. Boop. It's there forever. Number 6, military dolphins. Yep, I said military dolphins. Here we are, we're almost halfway through our list. We'll get a little more weird now. Iran has plenty of nuclear capabilities, but they also have trained dolphins now too, so good game, folks. Back in 2000, Iran bought this fleet of trained dolphins from Russia. Just Russians doing things. But they were trained, supposedly by the Soviet Union, to attack ships, and yes, you guessed it, attack people. We have Navy SEALs and military dolphins. Is this Aquaman 2? What's happening right now? Well, recently, and I mean that as in 2018 recent, satellite photos revealed a Russian naval base in Syria with pens that are commonly used for holding dolphins. Yeah, so these dolphins are active, perhaps, right now. That's so terrifying. Russia and the US have a fleet of trained dolphins to detect mines, but now Iran is also in the mix as well. So 3 powers in the dolphin game. What an odd standoff that would be in the water. They're all eating at each other. Number 5, Abel and Baker. Okay, we often remember Laika the space dog and her 103-minute cosmic journey aboard Sputnik 2. But does anybody remember Abel and Baker? Why don't we talk about these two enough? This was the American version of Laika. This was less than 2 years right after that. It was May 28th, 1959. The United States launched 2 female primates. They launched Abel and Baker into space. This mission only lasted 15 minutes and they both safely returned back home. That's wild to me. The monkeys weren't injured from the cosmic commute at all. A radio message came in shortly right after they splashed down in the Atlantic, and the message said, "No injuries or other difficulties." Thank the Lord, we love that. Abel and Baker, perfect, as they said. I don't think we can blast any more primates into space going 10,000 miles an hour anymore, but it's wild to me that we did this ever. This is insane. A human had to strap in a chimp into a rocket ship and be like, all right, see ya. And then, that's insane. Grown adults had to do that. That's insane. Abel sadly passed away shortly after the flight. Nothing to do with the actual flight itself, just timing. Meanwhile, Baker, she got famous. She was getting 150 fan letters a day. Imagine if she had Twitter. Oh, be wild. These ladies are icons. Never mind Laika, okay? Hit that thumbs up for Abel and then subscribe for Baker. They went in space. That's crazy. Number 4, Asteroid Redirection. Speaking of space, this one has Michael Bay written all over it. I can't wait. I'm pretty excited for this project. I can't even catch a baseball with my hands. You're telling me NASA is gonna catch an asteroid hurling through space? This is the future. We've arrived. NASA landing on an asteroid is one thing. Sure, that's, you know, a Michael Bay movie. But their asteroid redirection mission, that's a whole nother level. This coming Monday, as in like 4 days from now, I don't know, NASA is gonna broadcast its first attempt to modify the orbit of an asteroid, hurling through space. This is real life. And before you start to panic, no, there's no way any debris can hit the Earth after said test. But if an asteroid was coming for Earth, well, now we have a backup plan to hopefully, ideally, save the human race and the planet. That would be helpful. That's always handy. The planetary defense team is using a craft called DART, just sending a dart out there. You got a dart? Awesome. Double asteroid redirection test, DART, which will ideally target the asteroid Dimorphos and then altering its orbit. And we can tune in live to watch the whole thing on Monday, because that's where we're at in the future. We can just tune in live and watch Jake Paul fight someone or watch an asteroid get blasted off of its course. How are you spending your afternoon this Monday? Number 3, Project MDXX. If you've seen Project X, this one's gonna ring a bell or two. About 500 years ago, yep, you missed it, in 1520, for 2.5 weeks in June, both England's King Henry VIII and Francis I, two of the greatest monarchs in Renaissance Europe, they both threw a joint birthday party that lasted 18 days, and it only cost about $19 million by today's standards. Nice. I went mini putting for my 8th birthday. That's why I called it Project MDXX. The numerals in the year, yeah, you get it, not bad. Not only was this a chance for them to celebrate their friendship, but it was also a chance for them to try and outdo one another and continue to show off. So for this huge bash, for starters, around 12,000 people showed up and gathered in the fields of the northern tip of what is now France. All tents, costumes, decorations were all gold embellished. Guests were fed 29,000 fish, 98,000 eggs, 6,400 birds, 2,200 sheep, and 216,000 gallons of wine just to wash all that clout down. On top of that, there were jousts, wrestling matches, elaborate mask parties. I have FOMO just talking about it right now. The two kings both wanted to outdo each other, but there were rules put in place beforehand. These kings could not compete with one another during the celebrations, right? So instead they tried to outspend each other in a nice way. They're like, oh yes, look at all of my gold. No, look at all my gold. We love blowing all of our resources in 2.5 weeks. Nice. Looking good, guys. Keep it up.
Number 2, Olympic arts. In the early 20th century, the Olympics were getting creative, literally. Hundreds of years of blood, sport, and victorious games, and people were looking for some new events. 1912 Summer Olympics, they decided to add official awarded medals for painting, sculpture, architecture, literature, and music. Alright, one rule though, They had to be of Olympic sport nature. Paintings of people boxing, sculptures of people whipping discs around, and of course a couple doodles of some dudes playing rugby. Which won Gene Jacoby 2 gold medals. Of course, these were Olympic grade pieces of art, so you know they were the best of the best. Of course, you could compete in both sport and art. American athlete Walter Winans took the podium after winning gold in sharpshooting, and also the very first gold in sculpture. Yeah, lovely. He made a little bronze horse pulling a chariot. Isn't that nice? People just taping up their wrists, mouth guards in, and you're just sharpening your pencil. Hey, how are ya? About to draw. Good luck.
And finally, number 1, Jurassic timeline. All right, this one goes out to all the T-Rexes out there. If you're watching, hit that thumbs up with your little hands. Nice big reach. Hit that subscribe button. When we think of the times of the dinosaurs, we tend to think of all of them roaming the planet at one time, and then a meteor hit, and then they were all toast. But that is certainly not the case. It's a little shocking, but here's our timeline. Dinosaur communities were not only spread apart by geography, but also by time and the age of the dinosaurs. For one, it lasted so long that it included 3 separate geological time periods. It's a long time. Fun fact, there is more time separating the Tyrannosaurus rex from the Stegosaurus than there is separating the Tyrannosaurus rex from humans. Yeah, that's how long ago dinosaurs have been kicking, or not kicking rather, you know what I mean? We can't comprehend this time. Like, this is so far away, it doesn't even make sense. We think of the ancient Egyptians and we're like, oh, that's, I don't know. Dinosaurs? Stegosaurus, you know those herbivores with the plates on their back and the spiky tails? They always do this and take out your cars, whatever, Jurassic World, I've seen it. They roamed Earth 150 million years ago during the Jurassic period and the age of the dinosaurs. And then the T-Rex first appeared about 80 million years after the Stegosaurus had been extinct, and that was about, 67 million years ago from today. This means that while 80 million years separated those two, there's only 67 million years that separate us from a T-Rex. Crazy fact. Hit that thumbs up.
Number 10. John Mack. In the early 90s, a Pulitzer Prize winning psychologist named Dr. John E. Mack made the jump from diagnosing ordinary psychological conditions to researching apparent alien abductees and their stories and experiences surrounding UFOs. Yep, Google it up. It's actually terrifying and very real. Apparently, cases studied by Mack and abductions sometimes get involved with hypnosis. This guy was a tenured professor since the 50s at Harvard. He did his research. The UFO abduction rabbit hole led him to interviewing and studying more than 200 people who insist that they were taken. At first, he was trying to crack the psychosis of the subject, but after studying and funding from the Rockefellers, private donors, and universities, he wrote numerous books on the phenomena and its strangeness. Again, tenured and Pulitzer Prize winner. He sadly passed in 2004 from a drunk driver. His life and death holds heavy conspiracy debate around it. Check it out, it's a little bit strange. Number 9, Sophia. We've seen her on Fallon, we've seen her on breakfast television. She still looks like a bad cyberpunk character, doesn't she? Sophia by Hanson Robotics, the most advanced human-like robot that we have. Well, actually, this is like their 12th one. This is the world's first robot citizen, literally. Not only is she considered a citizen, she has a credit card and a seat in the UN. Like, what? In 2016, Sophia premiered on the Jimmy Fallon Show, playing rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, simple stuff. 2 years later, she's harmonizing with Jimmy live. Also, they didn't sing Mr. Roboto. Like, I just feel like that was a huge missed opportunity there. Like, where are the writers, dude? I've seen The Terminator and Ex Machina, and at the Web Summit presentation in 2018, Sophia and her brother Han glitched out on stage and had a terrifying, cryptic, non-coherent conversation, joking about ending the world. Yeah, it's horrifying. You gotta check it out. Dude, I feel like Furbies were their first try, and now they got these like Brat Dolls mini Sophias coming out soon. Like, where's this going? Number 8. Arthur Flowerdew. James Arthur Flowerdew was born in England in 1906. Grew up, paid his taxes, lived a pretty normal life. At about the age of 12, he began to have strange recurring dreams and hallucinations, though. Over time, crystallizing into a very clear and vivid image. Dreams riddled with stone cities, carvings in cliffs, and vast deserts. He didn't understand what it all meant. One day, as an old man, he was watching a documentary on the BBC on the ancient city of Petra in Jordan. He was stunned. This was the city he had always seen. He called the BBC and asked them to interview him. Archaeological experts and the Jordanian government even invited him to come out to Jordan, where he continued to even baffle experts. Flowerdew was able to find his way around the city without a map, giving precise details on landmarks and even pointing out undiscovered locations. Yeah, here's the scary part. After all of this, he was convinced that he had lived an entire previous life in ancient times and was reincarnated in the 20th century.
Number 7. Lost at Sea. The Robertson family, they're quite a historical one. Strap in, folks. Back in 1971, Dougal, Lynn, and their 4 children, Anne, Douglas, Neil, and Sandy, all set sail on what was planned to be a trip around the world. It sounds magnificent. Our family saw a movie once. Aboard their 13-meter boat, the Lucette, they traveled through the Caribbean and then across the Panama Canal to the Pacific, right? That was their trail. A year and a half went by, they were en route through the Galapagos, and one of the daughters, Anne, who was 18, decided to leave the voyage. Yeah, she's like, you know what? I'm actually not on board for this anymore. I'm really seasick, bye. And then in Panama, they took on a hitchhiker named Robin Williams. Great name. This hitchhiker was in for more of an adventure than they thought, because after this point, their lives were never the same again. West of the Galapagos Islands, a pod of killer whales struck the boat. Wood then began to crack and the boat subsequently started to sink. They all moved to the inflatable life raft, but after 16 days of using their own breath to keep inflating it over and over 24/7, the 6 of them were sadly forced to relocate into an even smaller dinghy. Then they somehow survived for 38 days at sea, while sailing towards the center of the Pacific with no goal in mind other than to survive. All they had to drink was some water left over from the Lucette, with sea turtles being their only diet. Yeah, save the turtles, unless of course you're stranded at sea. Then in that case, sorry to 52 of you. Finally, after 38 days, they were spotted by a passing Japanese fishing boat, and then thankfully they were rescued.
Number 6. Mad Jack Churchill. No, not that Churchill, but equally as British and even bolder. Mad Jack Churchill, aka John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill, was a British Army officer who fought in the Second World War with a longbow, bagpipes, and a Scottish broadsword. Dude, this guy lived a life. Was in like every war. Trained people how to fight and how to parachute. This guy was fighting machine guns with a bow and a sword, and was at like the front of the lines, leading them, taunting people, playing the bagpipes. You know how intimidating that is? How is there not like 15 movies about this guy? Not only did he thrive in the rough stuff, Guy revolutionized surfing. He was also pissed the Americans dropped some nukes. He wanted to keep fighting, you know? Like imagine that pep talk. Alright lads, I'm gonna play a wee jingle here first, and then I'm gonna go out, take this sword, and I'm gonna start swinging. Alright? Good luck.
Number 5. Fake France. Towards the end of World War I, Paris was tired of, seeing their city of love get blown to smithereens, as one would. So they figured, you know what? Let's try and fool those Germans, right? Let's try and do some trickery. Let's just build a fake Paris and then shut out all the lights. And it worked. Yeah, they psyched them out. They created a decoy, a very large decoy. The life-size stunt double was posted up only a few miles west of the actual city in order to protect it. This tiny town called Masons Lafayette, now of course it's looking a lot more full than it was when it was, a hollow shell of a fake town. Now it's a tourist area. There were once 3 different zones set up around the real Paris. Zone A was northeast of the city, had fake train stations, mimicked a suburban region of St. Denis, but it had a big fake Gare du Nord train station, right? That was the main pull. Like, hey, come on, we're looking nice and hopeful, come attack us, and it worked. Zone B, northwest of the city, that was Masons Lafayette, the main fake Paris, right? And Zone C was the industrial area, just east of the city. They had massive factories built with, obviously nothing inside of them. This sounds pretty Home Alone when you think of it, but these missions only happening overnight, creating a light show with some big fancy props isn't a bad idea. It's gonna save a lot of lives and money. Lights were carefully spaced out so it looked like a breathing city from above, and they fell for it, for some of the time. They Looney Tuned the Germans, and it worked. They're like, yeah, it's Paris. Hit that really fast, it's good.
Number 4. Space junk. In 1961, John Glenn would become the first astronaut to successfully orbit in space. He lapped the Earth a couple times with the help of Friendship 7, NASA's command mission pushing ever closer and closer to the moon. While in space, Glenn and fellow crew noticed tiny gold particles that shone like fireflies. Quote, this is Friendship 7, try to describe what I'm seeing up here. It's a big mass of some very small particles that are brilliantly lit up like they're luminescent. I never saw anything like it. They're round a little, they're coming out of the capsule, and they just look like stars, a whole shower of them coming over. They had come to the conclusion it was liquid from inside the capsule and the suits leaking out. And that liquid was urine. Not aliens, not fireflies, not disintegrating ship Frozen pee-pee. Yeah, gets drinking all that Tang all day. Glenn flew on Discovery in 1998 and became, at age 77, the oldest person to fly in space. At the time. Damn Shatner. Number 2. Wow. In a 1959 paper, Cornell University physicists speculated that if an extraterrestrial civilization was attempting to communicate with us using radio signals, that they might use a frequency of 1420 megahertz, which is naturally emitted by hydrogen, the most common element in the universe. In 1973, Ohio State University assigned the Big Ear to the scientific search for extraterrestrial intelligence. 1977, Jerry Amon, a SETI volunteer astronomer, was analyzing data and spots a series of signal intensities and frequencies that left him and his colleagues astonished. The WOW signal was the first signal detected from Earth. The signal came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. Amon discovered the anomaly. Impressed by the result, on the computer printout he circled 6EQUJ5 and wrote 3 letters beside it. Wow. Leading to the event's famous name. The signal lasted for a full 72 seconds, and it remains today as the strongest candidate for an ET radio transmission ever detected. And number 1, of course, the USS Cyclops. Launched in May of 1910, the USS Cyclops was a Protus-class collier built for the United States Navy, a huge cargo ship designed for transporting coal. In 1918, the cursed vessel left Rio de Janeiro, heading for Barbados, right around a certain dangerous triangle. Unfortunately, the Voyager was never to be seen again. Named Cyclops after a race of giants from Greek mythology, she was huge and heavy, unmissable by the naked eye. So what happened to her? The loss of the ship and crew still remains the single largest loss of life at sea the United States Navy has ever experienced. Funny thing is, it went right through the Bermuda Triangle, a place where magnetic compasses stop working, ships are never heard from again, and of course the military still refuses to operate and research. Skeptics are quick to say aliens and black holes, but the magnetism surrounding the Bermuda Triangle cases might be a logical explanation. Number 9. Run, rabbit, run. Yeah, so apparently Australia has like every animal in the world except the cute little fuzzy ones. Yeah, every stinger, wing, and venom you can imagine. But no cutesies. No. Well, they do now. In 1859, English settler Thomas Austin had been officially noted for the introduction of rabbits into Australia. Yeah, Oryctolagus caniculus, to be exact. Even though rabbits had already kind of been brought over in the first fleet to the land of Oz. Not much, couple here, couple there. But these rabbits, however, yeah, they started migrating across Australia and destroyed around 2 million acres of land. Pesky widow wabbits. Yeah, basically excessive overgrazing caused widespread panic, damage, and sickness through and to the vegetation. Mate, they're bloody everywhere, these little devilish kangaroos, mate. Long bloody ears out to here, mate. Fangs down to here. Terrifying little things. Not like they're small, man. Yeah, little hoppy guys. During the 19th century, the country had set up rabbit-proof fences to protect its pastoral lands. Is there even such thing as rabbit-proof fences? Finally, in the 1950s, the Australian government had had enough. Started to use biological methods to control the excessive population. Yeah, sorry little guys. This guy's bright idea is believed to have an immense impact on the abundance of natural resources in Australia. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Thomas. Now we have no carrots, man.
Number 8. Legendary musical neighbors. It's weird how similar some of your neighbors are, right? Growing up, we had like 3 Davids on our street. They're all cops. Isn't that weird? I don't know, I just thought of that. They all loved cutting their lawn at 7 a.m. too. What a coincidence, how weird is that? Well, back in the 60s, rock icon Jimi Hendrix and the 18th century composer George Friedrich Handel, well, they were both neighbors. A couple hundred years apart, but neighbors nonetheless. They both lived in 23 Brook Street and 25 Brook Street in London. Now, had George been born, 200 years later, we'd have gotten the greatest collab of all time. Would have been like Watch the Throne, but times 3. If you're a local, of course you'll know there's a site there now, it's a famous landmark and all that jazz. But in terms of coincidences, there's music in the air. Something's going on Brook Street. Pick up an instrument or two, walk by, try the harp out. In that room specifically.
Number 7. Proctor's Ledge. Over 1,000 documents from Salem's witch trials, yet none of the accounts actually specify where the hangings took place. For more than 300 years, it was believed that the 19 people who were accused, tried, and executed in the Salem witch trials of 1692 were hanged at the summit of Gallows Hill. Maps of 1700 Salem show Gallows Hill marked out, but no actual marker of the execution site. That's odd. A team of researchers began to reconsider the evidence in 2010 and eventually concluded it was the right spot. Yeah, oopsies. Actually, the real execution spot was called Proctor's Ledge. Also, eerie name for where they hang people, isn't it? It was confirmed in 2016 by scientists after ground-penetrating data and writings from 1692 that it wasn't the actual location of the brutality. I know what you're thinking. It's named after John Proctor. No, it's not. However, really odd timing, as he was one of the witches accused of witchcraft. Locals say that the ghost named the Lady in White visits Proctor's Ledge often, which now makes sense with the whole "we found the right spot" stuff. Visitors claim to have caught sightings of her and even catch her disembodied voice. Yeah. Number 6. Props. Elmer McCurdy was an American outlaw, running with a small crew, banking and train robbing the Wild West until he was killed in a shootout with sheriffs after robbing a Katy train in Oklahoma in 1911. Famously known as the bandit who wouldn't give up, his mummified body was first put on display at an Oklahoma funeral home before being an amusement, traveling carnival show to carnival show during the 1920s right through the 1960s. After changing ownership several times, McCurdy's remains eventually wound up at the Pike Amusement Zone in Long Beach, California. His corpse was then used as a prop, but then discovered by a film crew on a set of The $6 Million Man. They were positively identified in 1976, and the following year, 1977, Elmer McCurdy's body was finally laid to rest at the Summit View Cemetery in Oklahoma. McCurdy's fingers were apparently so damaged that detectives couldn't even pull a fingerprint. The coroners had to x-ray his teeth and measure his bones to ID him. His pockets included a bullet, a Sunny Amusement Museum of Crime ticket, a newspaper article, and a 1924 penny. Yeah, that's terrible. Just weekend at Bernieing him for like 60 years set to set, not really knowing it's a real body? People will do anything for money, won't they? Number 5. Operation High Jump. Operation High Jump, officially named the United States Navy Antarctic Developments Program, launched in 1946 to 1947, an operation to establish an Antarctic research base organized by Admiral Richard E. Byrd. High Jump included 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircrafts. The war's end signaled the onset of the atomic age and a desire to secure supplies of uranium. With its almost unlimited mineral deposits, the largely unexplored territory of Antarctica was just the prize. It commenced 1946 and ended in late 1947. Or did it? Also known as Task Force 68, Byrd and his team established the Little America 4 base near 3 previous bases in the ice. The frozen aircrafts would photograph as much of the Antarctic's land surface as possible during this 3-month operation. Seems like the public thinks that High Jump could have been more fishy than we think. Seems like skeptics are leaning towards more of a secret military expedition to the center of the Earth type stuff. Yep. Apparently there's a mouth to the center of the planet in the Antarctic, and there was a secret race to find it. High Jump is still today at the mercy of the internet on whether or not it was a legit project or a secretly funded scientific expedition. Google it up. It's pretty wild and very real. Number 4. Ouija boards. Popularized by teens in the 1970s, the Ouija board has earned its reputation over the years. Created almost 100 years before its heightened popularity, the year is 1891, and as the first ads started to appear in papers claiming, quote, Ouija, the wonderful talking board, the title from a Pittsburgh toy and novelty shop. The first paper described it as a magical game that answered questions about the past, present, and future with marvelous accuracy. A flat board with the letters of the alphabet configured in 2 semicircles. Above, the numbers 0 through 9, the words yes and no in the upper corners, goodbye at the bottom. No batteries included nor needed. Now, the origins are pretty messy, and it's hard to kind of pinpoint who or what inspired these early attempts at this game. It kind of just appeared on shelves. No, literally. The Kennard Novelty Company exclusively made and marketed these talking boards, and apparently the lore goes that one of the designer's sisters was a medium and asked the board what it would like to be called. It responded, Ouija, followed by good luck. Well, that's absolutely terrifying. At least good sportsmanship though, right? Yeah, I've never played with one of these, nor will I ever. That's a no-brainer. Number 3. The Brown Sox. The Great Molasses Flood, aka the Boston Molasses Disaster, was an event that occurred January 1919 in the North End neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts. Happy New Year, everybody. Time to get sticky. Yeah, apparently weather temperatures had risen in Boston at the time, and the mixture of cold and hot molasses together mixed, due to the thermal expansion already inside the tank, eventually burst open and collapsed. Yeah, surf's up, dude. 2.3 million gallons of molasses actually, weighing around 13,000 tons, and resulted in a wave of molasses about 25 feet high. Yeah, just rushing through the streets at an estimated 60 kilometers an hour. Sadly, killing around 21 people and injuring about 150. Yeah, yikes. The event entered local folklore, and residents claimed for decades afterwards that the area still smelled of molasses. Yeah. Boston Brown Sox. How did we miss that? That would have been great. White Sox, Red Sox, Brown Sox, no. It was reported in papers that, quote, everything that a Bostonian touched was sticky, you know? Hey, this brown goop, yeah, it's wicked sticky, watch your feet.
Number 2, brand new bees. Yes, about time. A lot of us know bees is pretty harmless. They're fuzzy little pollinators, unless of course you're allergic, then in that case, get out of here, just run, we got you. But bees normally do a lot more good than harm. That was, of course, until an experiment in the 70s went south and created an entirely new crossbred evil bee. Awesome, look out I guess. This experiment was to take a regular honey bee and then breed it with a bee that's found in Africa that produces way more honey. And then of course the goal was to produce a manageable bee that would also provide more honey than a regular honeybee, right? Just better stuff. Well, the bees that came out were a lot less manageable, turns out, and they didn't even make more honey. Just an F all the way down. Throw some F's in the chat, boys. After this experiment ended, however, the bees got out into the environment, and in the 80s saw the beginning of some bee trouble. Yeah, they got out! Heads up, guys. New bees. Imagine that, being like, yeah, the bees got out. Yeah, they're new, we don't know. We don't know what they like to do. These bees are not only aggressive towards other kinds of bees, which, okay, relax, world star, that creates a huge problem, but they're also very aggressive towards humans. And when these bees sting you, their stinger stays with them. So they can, keep Julius Caesaring you over and over instead of losing the shank. Victims of these swarms receive 10 times the amount of stings as a regular swarm. Awesome. And they react to disturbances 10 times as fast, and they'll also chase said disturbance a quarter of a mile, so hope you got your running shoes on today. These bees have actually caused at least 1,000 deaths also, so yes, keep your heads up, they're definitely deadly.
Number 1. Tree huggers. Gotta end on a nice one, you know what I mean? Just spent some time up north climbing, planting some trees myself this past weekend, but, the great tree. Yeah, can't really climb this one. The Great Banyan Tree is located in Howrah, India. It's huge, like huge, and beautiful. The entire garden is actually one individual tree that spans 4 acres and is over 80 feet tall, making it one of the natural marvels of the world. Why is this not a UNESCO World Heritage Site by now? It was planted by locals of unknown almost 300 years ago. That's nice. The old Great Banyan Tree has roots that cover vast distances. Yeah, just for some numbers here, that's as wide and round as a Walmart. This thing is bigger than a Walmart. The canopy is all connected like the neural highway of a brain, connecting to each other in one giant labyrinth of root and leaf. Of course, the Sherman tree in California that was planted is the largest tree, but the humanity alone of this sacred tree humbles us in how small we are, how connected we could be, and the beauty of what a little bit of patience can do. That's nice. That's really nice. Number 9, the Crusades. A 3-part miniseries spanning over 200 years. These bloody and ruthless wars were battled between Muslim and Christians for the proprietorship over sacred sites and the land in the East Mediterranean. A 3-part miniseries spanning over 200 years. These bloody and ruthless wars were battled between Muslim and Christians for proprietorship over sacred sites and land in the East Mediterranean. Wars that resulted in 6 million deaths. The Knights Templar, a brotherhood of highly trained soldiers horseback bashing their way through the East. These guys were the real deal, almost like the Navy SEALs of their time. We've seen these paintings. The elite fighting force with the red cross painted on their chests. I wonder if they had to do a Hell Week. These soldiers were the most trained and savage fighters in all the Christian armies. Richard I leading the 3rd and final crusade, earning him the name Richard the Lionheart. Back then the names were always something so aggressive and scary. It was never like Richard the Clownfish or Henry the Pygmy Goat. No, we need fear. Way more fear. Number 8, the Magna Carta. The year's 1215. We need some laws, people. This document was one of its kind. A document setting out the laws and limitations from the common man to King John himself. A legal system written down so that there are clear do's and don'ts. No free man shall be seized, imprisoned, dispossessed, outlawed, exiled, or ruined in any way, nor in any way proceeded against except by the lawful judgment of his peers, and the law of the land. Did you get all that? Write that down. Except women. They don't have laws. And they can't act in plays. Sometimes people needed to face the music. And even animals. Huh? That's right, animals. Being tried. In a court. A lively and popular event trying any law-breaking animal from goats to pigs to even chickens. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, did you, Mr. Feathersworth, peck the floor, yes or no? Objection, Your Honor, leading the witness. My brain can't fathom this, guys. Number 7, friendly football. I'm actually happy that this really happened, and it's not just like a heartfelt Pepsi commercial that they drummed up in a meeting. Growing up, I thought this was fake due to the circumstances, but nope, this actually happened. During Christmas of 1914, a truce was held between Germany and the UK. Like, these people were trying to like take each other out, but you know, Christmas is Christmas. They decorated their shelters with lights and colors, exchanged gifts at no man's land, and played a game of football between the soldiers. Yeah, isn't that nice? Soccer, of course, not football. Just like dudes smashing into each other. Both Germany and the UK refused to declare an official ceasefire, but both sides declared a temporary ceasefire on their own. They gathered and celebrated 'Tising the season by singing carols, wrapping up gifts for each other, drinking some drinks, laughing some laughs, and of course, a slide tackle or two. Yeah, captains, come to me. Yeah, it's gonna be a red card for Gunter. Yeah, back 5, please. I said back 5. Kicker, go ahead, man.
Number 6, Yanni and Laurel. Okay, for a halfway point here, we have to throw in a fun recent one as well. This is kind of unbelievable, I don't know. I hope people look back on these in 1,000 years, they'll be so confused what happened with Yanni and Laurel. Who were these people? Why did they talk about them so much? Remember this? Yanni, Laurel, back in 2018? I only heard Yanni for like 2 weeks straight, and then one day I listened and I couldn't go back. It was just Laurel all of a sudden. Instead of Yanni, it went from Yanni to Laurel. Just like that, my life changed. I don't know what happened there. This got everybody talking. What is this phenomenon that happens? Same with the dress fiasco. Is it blue? Is it white? Is it gold? I don't know. What the hell is actually happening here? Well, many believe these viral illusions are proof that we're living in a simulation. Yeah, didn't expect me to say that, did ya? These arguments, no, the dress is blue, it's white, whatever. These situations prove that we perceive reality in our own way. Everybody's living their own individual perceived reality, so sometimes it always doesn't align. Sometimes I hear Yanni, and then sometimes I hear Laurel. And then I lose my mind. I can't go back now. God, I hated this so much. The dress was in 2015, the Yanni Laurel thing was 2018, so I don't know. We're due for another glitch in the Matrix. Will it be an auditory mix-up? Will it be visual like the dress? What's next? Either way, I'm out, and I'm not on board. Also, it's blue.
Number 5. Cheers. Located on the banks of the River Shannon in Athlone, Ireland, there's some taps that I hope have been cleaned over the past couple years. Like thousands of years to be exact. Sean's Bar has been serving drinks for nearly as long as people have been drinking them. Along with claiming to be the oldest pub in Ireland, Sean's Bar could be the oldest operating pub on the planet. In fact, in 2004, Guinness World Records issued a certificate to Sean's Bar as the oldest official pub in Ireland. The owner of Sean's Bar says that they found coins that dated to 900 AD, as well as the wattle and daub walls, which is an ancient building technique that mixed mud, wood, and clay together. Legend has it a man named Luan Mac Luachdik started the pub as a local guide to help travelers across the Shannon. Yeah, eventually a small settlement built up around the crossing point and led eventually top to a fully constructed pub. I'm pretty sure people couldn't say the name and just went with something way easier, you know what I mean? Right, are you going over to Sean McCann for a pint after the game? No. Oh, it's Sean's Bar now. Oh, that's much easier. Sean's. I'll meet you, Sean's.
Number 4, the Jim twins. Back in 1979, a set of twins were reunited. They were 39 at the time. This was of course a big moment in their lives, obviously, because for 37 years they barely knew of each other's existence. When they finally met, the long-lost twins had a bit more in common than anybody ever thought. For starters, both had been named Jim, which is amazing. I spoiled that in the fun title. But their adoptive parents both named the lads Jim. That's crazy. And both Jims loved math and carpentry. Both also had jobs in security at the time of their reconnection, and their ex-wives were both named Linda. And they'd since married a woman both named Betty. I don't know, this is kind of too parallel university for me. Imagine meeting another you, and he's like, yeah, I love surfing and IMAX movies. What are the odds? Like, how specific is this? Are you kidding? No way, that's for sure an alien. He's a Skrull. He's an imposter. Get him out.
Number 2, the printing press. The printing press is a machine that was designed for the mass printing of text, mostly in form of books and newspapers. With an unknown date of origin, first invented in China, this machine, designed in the 15th century by Johannes Gutenberg, was a revolutionary new form of writing which would only change the direction of history with the mass production of uniform text. Long story short, people didn't have to get the world's worst wrist cramp writing Hamlet over and over again. To be, or not to be, 86 more folios? The alphabetical metal keys would be placed into the device and slammed into the paper, pressing ink upon the parchment. You know there's gotta be some books half written in purple ink because they just ran out of black. Come on, we've all been there. Ink's expensive. Number 1. William Shakespeare. The Bard himself, arguably the most influential writer of the English language. William Shakespeare was born in Stratford, England. One of the easiest ways we can look back into the dialogue and lifestyle used by the people living in the Middle Ages. This playwright documents the world in which he lives from 1564 to 1616. Due to Shakespeare's unbelievable talent for building and fabricating an array of diverse stories and characters via players, modern day is able to see the Middle Ages and the similarities and differences the people were experiencing. His plays are based in the environment that they were written in. He writes about diseases, he writes about monarchy, he writes about women's rights. Okay, so no one actually got turned into a donkey by some fairies in the woods, but some of those wars actually did happen, and some of those kings and queens were really twisted. How this man created so many brilliant works and stories, all part of the mystery. What do you think? Genius? Or did the guy have some help?